How do you end a show that strives for realism? A show that constantly subverts tropes and expectations? And if the central conflict is one that you can't solve, then how do you end the show? The two shows I'm talking about are Crazy Ex-Girlfriend and BoJack Horseman. Maybe these aren't the first shows that come to mind when you think of realism, since they both have a fanciful streak. But animal puns and musical numbers are the sugar that makes the medicine go down. BoJack is well known for its soul-crushing bleakness, and Crazy Ex-Girlfriend goes to some very dark places that I did not expect from the first season. However, I think the greatest similarity between these two shows is the meta-narrative focus on storytelling. Rebecca and BoJack both have a tendency to view their lives as stories, and they both struggle to come to terms with the complexity of real life. Rebecca often uses musical theater tropes to sort out her emotions. The show begins with West Covina, a textbook I Want song. By the final season, it's made explicit that these musical numbers are actually happening in Rebecca's head. So I guess they're actually diegetic? But what about the songs that Rebecca doesn't sing? Well, in any case, in the final season, Rebecca sings her own 11 o'clock number and explains to Paula and the audience what this signifies and how the term originated in musical theater. But despite Rebecca's attempt to structure her life into a musical or a love story, or once a horror movie, real life gets in the way. These themes are perfectly laid out in the third season song, and one of my favorites from the series, The End of the Movie.
Life is a gradual series of revelations that occur over a period of time. Some things might happen that seem connected, but there's not always a reason or rhyme. People are in characters, they're complicated, and their choices don't always make sense.
Yeah, it's not subtle. BoJack the character has a similar obsession with stories and the comfort and order they can provide. When he reconnects with Sarah Lynn in the first season, he tries to act like they're in a feel-good family sitcom, ignoring the real issues that they have. Throughout the first season, he works on writing his memoir, which leads him to quite literally view his life as a story. And all stories need an end. This is a theme that crops up again and again in BoJack, but is put into words most clearly in the season 5 episode Free Churro.
You can't have happy endings in sitcoms, not really, because if everyone's happy, the show would be over. And above all else, the show has to keep going. There's always more show. And you can call horsing around dumb or bad or unrealistic, but there's nothing more realistic than that. You never get a happy ending, because there's always more show.
Both shows also delve into mental illness and recovery. Whereas BoJack's progress is considerably more frustrating to watch, Rebecca also takes 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Recovery is treated as a lifelong process and something that is never finished. So even though the main character's issues are the central conflict for both of these shows, neither can fully resolve this conflict by having the main character overcome their problems. So how do you write a satisfying conclusion to a story like this? Well, Crazy Ex-Girlfriend has ended, and it ended in just about the only way it could have. Rebecca didn't end up with one of the 3 love interests. Her story didn't end at all, really. Instead, the end evokes a new beginning, as Rebecca explores her passion for music and songwriting. I really liked this ending. Of course, it's the only way this show could have ended. It would have felt incredibly disingenuous for Rebecca to be in a relationship with any of the 3 guys. But I also really liked that it was left as an option. In the future, after the show, she could still be with Greg or Nathaniel or someone else. It's not that Rebecca can't or shouldn't have love. It's that she needs to not rely on this as her sole source of happiness. At the end, Rebecca puts this sentiment into words.
Because romantic love is not an ending. It's just a part of your story.
A lot of people have speculated on how BoJack Horseman will end. Despite the similarities, the show is harder to conclude than Crazy Ex-Girlfriend because it's that much bleaker and grittier. Each season ends on a hopeful note, only to be followed by even darker stuff than the season prior. The happy ending necessarily has to be negated in order for there to be more story. BoJack the character directly addresses this problem in relationship to the sitcom Horsin' Around. Any happy endings were only temporary. So what does this mean for BoJack the show as we go into the 6th and final season? There is a theory among some fans that BoJack will die at the end of the series. If this happens, I don't think that his death will be tragic, and I think the end will overall be bittersweet. But this ending would follow from some foreshadowing. As we learn in the first episode, Horsing Around ended with the horse dying, and when trying to write his memoir, BoJack realizes his story can't end until he dies. Then there's that ominous free churro quote.
Because there's always more show. I guess until there isn't.
Another option is to end the series in much the same way they've ended each season, on a hopeful, optimistic note, where BoJack is on the road to recovery and making progress. A happy ending. At this point, a happy ending would be understood by fans to only ever be temporary. This time, it'll be up to us to imagine what comes next. Surely BoJack will face more setbacks and make more mistakes in his life, but perhaps the worst is behind him. In a way, the show ending is a relief. It means maybe these characters can finally be happy because they're no longer in a story. I think I would prefer this ending. I'm sure some fans would call it a cop-out, but much like the end of Crazy Ex-Girlfriend, I think it would feel both satisfying and realistic, which is a tricky balance to strike. The trailer for the upcoming 6th and final season looks quite positive, after an especially dark 5th season. BoJack is in rehab and seems to be doing well.
I bought into this idea that I was the thing that couldn't be changed. The main thing I think about is how stupid I am that I didn't do this sooner.
Not to say that there won't be ups and downs, or any of those classic BoJack gut punches, but going into this final season of one of my all-time favorite shows, I'm going to keep in mind that a downer ending isn't necessarily a realistic one, and that just because happiness is fleeting doesn't mean it's any less valuable. Thanks for watching. I had this written as a script for a few months and finally got around to finishing it now that the final season has been announced. I'm sure I'll be releasing some videos about that too when it comes out, so if you'd like to see that, feel free to subscribe. Thanks.